Don, thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast today. I really appreciate it because I know you're super busy. How you doing?
Seb, I'm fantastic, wonderfully blessed. How are you doing?
I am also wonderfully blessed, and I feel great today. And not least of which is because I have you here on the podcast with me. And so most of my podcast guests are people I've never met before, and I have met you, albeit just so briefly, at the Society for Certified Senior Advisors conference in Baltimore a few weeks ago. And there were many different people who were presenting that day, and some of them were better than others. And you certainly meet that description. You gave one of the best. Um, like sessions I've seen at a conference because just the way that you worked the crowd, right? You had people laughing and like agreeing with you about everything that you said, and it was really just a masterful performance. And I thought, man, this is a guy that I really need to learn more about, and so that's why I want to have you on the show. So, for people who don't know who you are, tell us who is Don Graves and what are you all about?
Well, most people know me as a reverse mortgage educator and author and expert, so called. And I've spent 26 years kind of doing that. And so that's where a lot of people know me through reading my books or watching or any of those type of things. And that's how you and I met because I was invited to speak about the newly restructured reverse mortgage, which typically gets a big gasp when, when I'm called to talk about it. And you mentioned reverse mortgages at the barbecue. I said, you just know what happens. Three people dove under the table, three people ran from the table, and your Aunt Janie, who did some time, made a shank out of a plastic knife and fork and came after you. So I deal in dangerous spaces. I'm talking about this reverse mortgage, but that's kind of my most immediate background.
Your most immediate background. Okay, and I do want to talk about reverse mortgages, but before that, 26 years, and how old are you today?
I'll be 60 in a few months.
So that means that you got, so you were, what, 34 when you got into doing this? Is that correct? Do I have that math right? Okay, so so 34 years ago, what were you doing before you became a reverse mortgage? Like, where are you from? What's your family like? Like,
Yeah,
what, what? Oh, go on.
mama's from Winchester, Kentucky. Daddy's from Falmouth, Kentucky. And they met and got married, and that's where our family were started. Four of us, four siblings there in Kentucky. That's where both sets of grandparents, uncles, cousins. So I have Kentucky sensibilities, I will tell folk. Now, Daddy migrated to Cincinnati. Now, most blacks south of the Ohio River tried to get north. So you got to Cincinnati because you had Kroger or Procter and Gamble, General Electric, or you got up to Akron because you had Firestone or Detroit. So you migrated. So Daddy in Kentucky and Ohio share a river, so he didn't go very far. Cincinnati, and then I came up to Philadelphia in 1985 and to finish school and do grad school. Met my wife of 35 years and three children, a couple guinea pigs, hamsters, cats, dogs, and a roach named George who escaped on the third floor and just whizzed everybody out. That's kind of where I'm from. So those are my Kentucky sensibilities there.
All right, so you got married right around the time that you became a reverse mortgage specialist.
I got married in
One year
no,
after.
35 years in. So I got married in 1990. Reverse mortgage was 2000.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry. I got the math wrong. See, I'm very bad with math. That's why I'm not a reverse mortgage specialist. So yeah, so you're talking about the black migration, I think they call it, right? Like post World War II, right? Is this the time we're talking about here?
Yeah, the great migration.
Right. All right. Very good. And so not very far away. And so so you grew up then in like not really like you have Kentucky sensibilities, but you moved out of there by what age?
We had I'm the baby. I'm 14 years younger than my siblings. So somewhere early in my life, we were in Ohio. But we were in Kentucky every weekend because it was so most of my weekends and Sunday school and church growing up were in Kentucky because that's where we went on Fridays. Um,
Really? So you guys kept a house back in Kentucky and you lived in
no,
Ohio?
just family. We didn't keep a house. I stayed with my cousins and so plenty of people to stay with. But that was just the way. That's the only life I knew. Seb was
Right.
Friday, pack up, Again, it's not far. We share a river, so you didn't go far, but you
Like
went
like
down.
50
That's a
miles?
river.
Is that what it is? It's like 50 miles? I have no idea. I've never been to Kentucky before.
It's 1 mile. It's literally Cincinnati shares the Ohio River, and right across is Kentucky. So
Literally just across the river,
it's
across a
just
bridge.
it's just there.
Right. Okay. Well,
Yeah, so
just
Falmouth,
educate me.
Kentucky is probably about 45 minutes. Sits on the Licking River, and
Okay. Well,
Licking River comes off the Ohio River and flooded. It flooded years back, terrible flood, and Falmouth is known by a tornado. Tornado came through. I guess that was about 1968, 1969, and just tore the town up. F5 tornado, and there were no basements in the section that we lived in. There was a certain people group that had to live in a certain part of town in those days, and there were no basements. My cousins were out in the field playing, Robbie and Jeff, and my grandmother, grandmommy, came running out in the field, and she's waving her hands, waving her hands. And the story's told that we don't know what grandmommy's saying, but we've never seen her running. So it must be pretty important. She's running, and so she's waving, and then my cousin turned, what's going on? And she just said, "Twister's coming." There are no sirens in those days. Twister's coming. How she knew, we don't know. So they went back in the house, went into the kitchen. She grabbed hold of the sink, which is the most stable thing in the kitchen, and Robbie, Butchie, Jeff, the cousins grabbed hold of her. And grandmommy said, "Don't let go. Whatever happens, don't let go. Don't look up." So my cousin Robin was on the end, and the house was shaking, and Robin did look up. And she looked up, and she said, "I don't know why I did that, because I saw the Hinton's house come off the ground, turn over, and crash, and they're screaming, smoke, freight train, shaking, and all of a sudden it was over. It didn't last very long. And when they all finished screaming, holding on to grandmommy, they took a head count and looked up. Everything was gone except for that sink, my grandmother, and my cousins. So Falmouth, Kentucky. That was so we went down all the time. Rebuilt the house. First house with a basement was we rebuilt grandmommy's house, and Sylvia's house. My aunt was right next door, and that's the first house with a basement. So every time I hear a siren, a tornado siren, it hits differently for me because I know what that thing can do if you're not careful.
wow, that is an amazing. That's an incredible story. Uh, and geez, wow, I can't imagine that. But let me ask you this: like, you're saying they're not very far apart, but like culturally, what was the difference between like Cincinnati and Falmouth, Kentucky that, like that attracted you to? Was it all about the money, or what was the big reason to like work in Cincinnati and then have the weekends in Kentucky?
But I don't know. The weekends are just family. That's what you did. Mom and dad are close to family, aging parents. But again, Cincinnati had employment. So if you're down in Falmouth, Kentucky, Paris, Butler, Cynthiana, you're working at the factory, at the mill, and if you wanted some opportunities to grow your family, grow your revenue, you'd migrate. So Cincinnati again had headquarters for Procter and Gamble was there. Kroger's headquarters was there, and General Electric had a big manufacturing plant there. So Daddy ended up with General Electric, and so that was a good living for. He was an inspector of jet engines.
Cool. That's a good gig.
Sure, for a black man from the South, that's a great gig.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know much about the lived experience of a black man in the South, but but I do know that jet engines are cool.
They are. They're certainly cool. Yeah,
So
yeah.
so he had a pretty rewarding career, do you think?
I think again, our goal was to get all. My dad had an eighth grade education, and he was the oldest of six siblings, and he went into the Navy at 15. He lied and got in at 15 and went to World War II. And something never talked about. Not once did he ever talk to me about his Navy experience on the ship, but it was pretty bad. But when he came off, he had a tremendous sense of responsibility. And so he became a ferocious reader. He honored God, honored country, pay your bills on time, and he began to move his little family for greater opportunities. And so he got all of us through high school, got us all to college, and my sister and I went on to graduate school. And Daddy would say that was a very rewarding journey. And so he taught me the value of responsibility, the value of generational wealth. And someone said, "Did your daddy leave you a lot of money?" I said, "Money? No, he left me a lot more than money." I said, "He left me a pocket knife, an army coat, and 5 guns, because that's what you do in Kentucky." And I said, "No." I said, "You know what my daddy left me? He left me the ability to take an eighth grade education and turn it into something amazing, where you raise up your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, and they're able to be upwardly mobile, success oriented, fear God, honor their word." I said, "My daddy left me a lot more than money." I said, "Now, I got houses and land now, but I've got something that was instilled in me." And that's one of the talks I've been doing lately, is that generational wealth is more than money. And how many times do you see someone, you left the kids this house, they were raggedy, they didn't know how to pay taxes or take care of stuff, and they just went to seed, or they gambled it away, or they weren't responsible. So you thought you had generational wealth, all you had was money, but they didn't have the true wealth that comes from the inside.
Wow, that is really amazing. So, a man with a eighth grade education joins the Navy at 15 years old. My grandfather also joined the Navy when he was 16, but they found out and they kicked him out. A little bit of a coincidence there, I guess. And then moves his family to another town, although not very far away, and becomes an employee of GE inspecting jet engines at a time when I imagine there were probably not a lot of African Americans in that line of work. Is that true?
That's fair to say, absolutely.
Yeah. So your dad sounds like a pretty incredible person to do all that. I mean, that is way outside the box.
Sure, he had a sense of purpose and calling, and again, he was the oldest. My grandmother had him; she was 14 when she had Daddy, and so they were very close. And he had a deep love for his mom, and certainly instilled that in all of us. That's probably why we were there every weekend. But he had a deep love for his siblings, his other siblings. At that time, and I didn't discover this, Seb, until later in life. Speaking to my aunt's 93rd birthday was just a few weeks ago, but speaking to the ones that are alive, and at that time, at that part of Kentucky, you could only go up to eighth grade unless you went to some sort of boarding school. And my daddy, he had these three younger sisters, and he wanted to make sure they had the education, so he helped them go to boarding school. I mean, another town had to pay money to get there, but he helped all my siblings, not excuse me, his sisters, his siblings, not the boys, but the girls, to get to boarding school and to graduate from high school. And so they speak with deep reverence for my father, just because he took that responsibility very seriously.
Yeah, well, yeah, apparently so. And you mentioned this generational wealth thing, which I find to be particularly interesting, your spin on it, because it's so much more than money. It's like, for example, in my experience, I see like, okay, I'm a realtor. I sell real estate in and around Silicon Valley, and you see a lot of parents who they worked at HP, or they worked at Intel, or they worked at Bell Labs, or like NASA, or like they're all these engineers, and they made pretty good money. They would have been maybe affluent, if not straight up wealthy. But I tend to notice that a lot of their kids live in the basement. A lot of their kids did not achieve anywhere near at the level that their parents did. And um, I just think that really, like, what didn't the parents teach their kids that your dad taught you?
Hmm.
Right? I mean, like, these people literally have every advantage in the world. It sounds like your dad did not have very many advantages, right? But he must have had some big advantages over these other people that I'm talking about here, children of privilege. What do you think are the big advantages that your dad had?
I don't think I've ever thought about that. Um, Hardship, properly approached, can really build character, define character. So having a mother who had him at 14 and poor Kentucky meant that you learned at an early age to be responsible. Cook, clean, get firewood, hunt, fish, do whatever you had to do to survive. And my grandmother was a praying woman. And that's, I would say, that was really a big thing. She was a praying woman and believed strongly in the Lord and had a sense that, she could hear from the Lord. And she wanted to instill that in her kids. And one of the story I told you about the tornado and her running out and waving, and my cousins saying they didn't understand the waving, but they knew something was wrong because she was running. And well, Grandma, how'd you know there was a twister coming, a tornado? Don't know. It's in the air. She just ran out there tearing off in the field. Twister's coming, and we don't know how she knew. But that's a an experience of vigilance, of hardship, of overcoming, of making do, and of staying grateful. I think gratitude is a is part of generational wealth. We know some folks said that their grandmother was a complainer, then their mother was a complainer. Now, now their kids never have anything good to say. Always complaining. And how's your day going? It's terrible. Just gratitude is generational, and I think that leads to greater blessings and a positive outlook. And so we had a lot of laughter and joy in our homes growing up in Kentucky. Maybe not a lot of money, but Dad was a very serious reader, and he made the most. And that's what it taught me. Make the most of whatever life gives you. Grow and expand and build for another generation. He was seeing beyond. He didn't want his family to have certain influences around him. And that was a big thing. A lot of bourbon in Kentucky. And so my mother, everybody knows my mom by the name Nip, N-I-P. And that's all the grandkids, that's all they only know her name is Juanita. She's just Nip. And that's all she's ever been called. And that was a family of alcoholism, very strong. But my mother refused to drink. Well, everybody drank. And when she met my father, I thought he gave her the nickname Nip because she would only just take a nip. And she said, no, he gave me the nickname because I wouldn't take a nip. And so she was dry, her kids are dry. So we grew up, and that really, that's generational wealth to me, to say, I'm going to make a stand that because of what I've seen, because of the tremendous alcoholism and the grip that it can get, not on everybody, but on some folks. I don't want that for my kids, my grandkids. And she grew up as a teetotaler, and most of us. So that was something. And I look back, and you said, what did I learn from Mama and Daddy? That it's multi-generational. It's not how much I can get for myself or what I do. It's my grandchildren. It's my great-grandchildren. It's instilling and living in such a way that they learn not just by what is taught, but what is caught from my lifestyle.
Right on. So I hear joy, love, laughter, family are some of the key ingredients to building generational wealth. And then you mentioned adversity, which I find to be very interesting because like I happen to notice, like I work with a lot of immigrants, right? I mean, and a lot of them are maybe, undocumented from Mexico, right? A lot of them are H-1B visa people or whatever from India and China specifically, right? And a lot of those folks, when they come here, like California has this bad rap, the Bay Area has a bad rap. They love it. They think it's amazing, right? They think it's the best thing ever, right? They're like, oh my God, like there's just so much opportunity here. And they have all the local people going, oh, this place sucks, right? It's everything is just so horrible here, right? But because where they came from, right? I mean, like the hoops they had to go through, the marathons they had to run just to qualify to get here. And a lot of times it's because family money, sure, but not really from India so much. A lot of people from India came from nothing, right? Literally nothing. And they worked their way through based on their merits to come here, and they do exceedingly well. But even a long time ago, I was reading about, I wish I could remember the book. It was talking about the experience of Koreans moving to Los Angeles, like in the 1950s, right? And they said that after a few years of living in Los Angeles, the Koreans had higher income than native born Angelenos.
Mm.
right? Not
Mm.
speaking the language, not really having much in the way of property or connections or anything. And it's that adversity that that really made them, who they are. And I think that a lot of us have really lost that here, right? You can see it all over the place, right? Like people didn't have any adversity. They didn't have love and joy and laughter in their strength because the American family, generally speaking, certainly the white American family, if I can say, is not as cohesive and tight and supportive, I don't think, which is why you see like when I see homeless people, man, a lot of them are like white people, right? I don't see too many homeless Mexican people around in California. California is 50% Latino, right? Or more maybe now, right? And you just don't see it. So it really is interesting how people's lives really form, like their early lives, how they form what happens to them later in life.
Hmm.
So thank you for sharing so much of that of your family. That was really powerful. But now I'm dying to ask, why did you move to Philadelphia? Right? You had your family. I mean, it sounds great, right? Like in
Yeah.
Kentucky and Ohio. What prompted you to move to Philly?
For folks who've ever grown up in the Midwest and South, for a lot of folks, um, you want to see what's outside of those walls. And I just wanted to see, I wanted to get out of the Midwest and get away from that. And really wasn't much more exciting than that. My sister is 14 years older than me, and she had done her schooling in New York and D.C. and their PhD work. And I said, "Hey, I want to get out of the Midwest. Send me somewhere." She said, "What about New York?" "Nah, it's too big." "What about D.C.?" "That's not exciting." And she had an old ex-boyfriend who was dean of school in outside of the Philadelphia area. She said, "I'll call Tony." And he said, "Oh, Donnie can come up here. I'll get him in. We'll get him some money. It'll be good." But that school was a small, excellent, private liberal arts school. And I said, "Oh, there's not a lot of people out there. I want somewhere in the city and bigger." So I ended up at Temple University, right in the heart of Philadelphia. And that was exciting, a big city and all these folks. So I got up here and promptly got mugged on the subway. And about 5 or 6 days in, and I should have been mugged. We should have been mugged. I mean, we had no business on the subway. There was, we had, I said, there's not enough dormitory housing, so the university will put you up somewhere. Anyway, me and my roommate Big John and Mark and Scott and a young lady named Frida, and she was in West Philadelphia, and Temple's not. So we said, "Well, Frida, we'll go to where you stand, get some of your clothes, and you can come back and sleep on our floor." So we're taking the Philadelphia subway at midnight. Now, none of us are from Philadelphia. John's from Erie, someone's from York, someone's from Montclair. We don't look like native Philadelphians at midnight riding the subway. And so when I said we looked like, please jump us and beat us up. I was like, we had a sign and we're going the wrong way and we're pointing. "Oh, look at there. That's a funny looking sign." And oh my gosh. So, but I learned quickly. It was terrible. But I learned. So I learned how to ride the subway after that. Look straight ahead, don't look anybody in the eye, don't try to smile, just get to your destination. Though, just life in the big city. People, that was, good Lord, 1985, so that's a long time.
Well, it was a rough time. I mean, for a lot of American cities, right? In mid '80s, like New York was on the verge of bankruptcy in 1985, right? So all I know about West Philadelphia is that's where the Fresh Prince comes from, right? That's all I know about West Philly. I had been to Philly one time for a wedding, and we were right downtown. I think the wedding was in the Four Seasons or something like that, so it was
Well, that's
pretty nice. And I
yeah.
saw Ben Franklin's tomb, and I saw Liberty Hall or whatever it is, right? So
Yeah.
what did you study at Temple? What was your degree in?
Business and economics.
Business and economics. So how did you choose that major?
Um, Followed after my big sister, and she was in financial services. And I like business. I thought, well, that's what I'm groomed to do. So I started out in accounting at the University of Cincinnati, and after I did an internship with Arthur Anderson, as it was called in those days, I thought, I don't want to do this. Oh, this is I said, I want to do finance. I want to do something that's more exciting. And so that's what I ended up doing.
All right. So so you moved to Philly in '85, and then did you graduate in 4 years, or
No, I putzed around because I was working and met a girl and all that. So I eventually came out. I went part time and worked my way through. So it was 90. I came out and I got married in 90 because my father in law, at the time, I wanted to get married in 88 when my wife graduated. My father in law said, "Do you have a full time job?" I said, "No, no, doing this and that." He said, "Well, do you have a degree?" "No." He said, "Young man, I don't give you my blessings." He says, "Tell you what, you come back when you have show me a pay stub from a full time job and a degree." And so I stopped putzing around after that and got it done and graduated. Summer school, I think it was July in 1990. Went to Central PA where my girlfriend lived, fiance, and said to her father, "Here's my check from Cigna Insurance Company, and here's my degree, bachelor's in business administration, blah blah blah." And he gave me permission. And I always appreciate my father-in-law. And I tell my two boys, I said, there's certain things in life that build your character that only sometimes another man can see that and pull that out of you. So my father-in-law said, "No, this guy doesn't complete circles. He does this, he kind of puts around. That's not what I want for my daughter." And he called me out. He called my character out to say, "You've got to complete some circles. You've got to have a plan. You've got to have a job. You have to show me something." And I was upset about it. I thought we'll elope. We're going to elope. And my wife's pastor at the time says, "You can't do that. You have to honor her father. You have to honor her mother and father and do what that man has asked you to do." And said, "Donnie, that's part of your character, to finish the things that you started." And so I knew that. I knew that from my own father's life that we talked about. But so certainly here, and I've taught that to my boys, that you can't run from hardship. Yes, you made some mistakes. And the hardest part about finishing my degree, Seb, was not the new courses I had to take, but I had dropped or withdrawn from 5 courses, meaning I got up there to the end and I didn't do the final paper. So I dropped 5. That was the hardest part because now I have to go back, find that professor, and some of them say, "I'll just take the exam." Some of them say, "Nope, you got to take the whole class again." And that was hard to do that. So, but that was, I tell folks, that's part of my story. That's part of the character building. And and if my father-in-law had not called that out of me, I don't know if I've been the man that I am today. But yeah, you complete circles. You do what you said you do. You honor your word, and you earn the right to do some things. And so, like maybe the Marines, whether it's something is not given, it's earned. I forgot who says that. Respect is not given, it's earned. And so, anyway, I don't know how we got off onto that, but that was kind of.
well, that was I'm glad we learned about that. That is another amazing life lesson there. So thank you for sharing that too. But you worked at Cigna Insurance
When I got
right
out
out
of
of
college.
school.
Yeah, yeah, I got
Were,
got a little job there.
were you in finance? Were you doing annuities or something like that, or what were you doing at Cigna
I,
Insurance?
I was working in fleet management. Um, I don't even remember. It was a job. I was so happy to have a job and a paycheck, and they managed the fleets and insured the fleets of lots of companies, and I was just doing basic stuff. Add this, calculate this, file this, figure this out. Nothing exciting.
Right. Okay. And so maybe that's why you don't work at Insignia anymore. So how did you how did you go from doing that to working in reverse mortgages? How did that happen?
Well, not long after that happened, I was involved in a campus ministry at Temple University, and a larger organization said, "Hey, you've got one of the largest kind of African American student ministries on the East Coast. How do you get paid?" I said, "People get paid to do this?" "Oh, well, no, I had no idea. We were just doing stuff, a couple hundred kids." And so this large global group says, "Hey, we'll help you to raise donors." And they were very gracious to us. But out of that, I end up moving into that in a full-time capacity and would lead teams of students. I went to Russia for 2 months, and the following year went to Africa for 3 months and led a team of students there, and then came back and pastored and planted a church on the campus of University of Pennsylvania. Did some innovative and unique things, and from there ended up working as what some would call a community pastor. I called it, I was the CEO of Habitat for Humanity in Philadelphia at the time, and it was going through some transition. So I was in Census Tract 152. At the time, the median household income was $7,918. And Habitat was there in that community, building homes and engaging and doing some community development activity. And so that's where a lot of my learning, my people learning, really got honed, because I learned about folks that sometimes have made some very serious mistakes in their life. And the consequences, emotional or economically, were facing them. Some folks just got dealt a bad hand, didn't have anything to do with them, had everything to do with their parents or their situation. And so I saw economic impulse and political intrigue, and oh my gosh, that was a learning experience for me, being in North Philadelphia during those years, and I enjoyed it. It was hard plowing, but I enjoyed it. And so one day my sister, who I've mentioned a few times, 14 years older, called me and, "Look, brother, I got a business opportunity for you to look at." And that's not unusual. That's why I came to Philadelphia. I thought I'll get this business and go back and work with her in finance. But I met some folk and stayed up here. I said, "Okay, what's your business opportunity? What's it look like?" So she described it to me. And Seb, I thought, no, I don't want anything to do with that. You taking old people's houses, you're going to go to jail behind this. A reverse what? Oh, no, 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 no. I dismissed it. I poo-pooed it. And I asked my sister, "Why do you think I'd want to do this reverse mortgage thing anyway?" And she says, "Well, number one, you love helping people. And number two, you're poor." and and I said, "I'm not poor. I'm an executive with Habitat." She said, "You're poor. And my nieces and nephews are going to go to poor schools, and they're not going to graduate, and they may get killed." And they said, "You're poor. You don't have two nickels." And I disputed that. And here's what I said to her. I said, "Well, God will provide." And my sister said to me, "God has provided. He's provided you with a brain and a big sister. You need to put those two together and listen to what I'm saying." Well, it was a year later. I poo-pooed it. Don't talk to me about it again. It was a year later. Some things happened in my home. My basement flooded. Sewage backed up. Insurance company says we're not going to pay for it. It was going to be $20,000 worth of work. And I realized at the time, said, wow, I've got income, but I don't really have savings. I don't have an emergency. I don't have a backup. I don't have wealth. I am poor. So I called my sister. I talked to her regularly. I said, "Hey, what's that deal you told me about? Let me research it." And so I called anyone who gets a reverse mortgage, you've got to do counseling. And so HUD had authorized, there were 5 counseling agencies in Greater Philadelphia. I called all 5. I got breakfast with 3 of them, and I sat down and I said, "What's the aha, the fine print, the gotcha?" Because I knew a good name was better than great riches, and I had a good name. I didn't want it to be messed up with some nonsense. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development had a home ownership center in the Wanamaker building, downtown Philadelphia. I went and talked with them, talked with Fannie Mae, talked with AARP. I talked to all these people. What's the gotcha? What's the aha? What's the fine print? And said, but after I did all that, I came away saying, wow, this reverse mortgage could be a great thing for the right people. And that's how I got involved. And so I got hired. The lady said, "You ever sold anything?" I said, "I was a pastor. Maybe Jesus, does that count?" I said, "No, I don't think I've sold anything." I said, "But I'm passionate." I said, "I've researched this. It makes sense for the right person. And because I move by passion and education, I believe I can help the right people to do that." And so that was Patty Wills hired me. The interview was at either the Chesapeake House or the Maryland House on I-95. It's a rest stop. That's where my interview was. And that was the Wild West, reverse mortgages 25 years ago, 26. That was my journey. That's how I got into it. So here I am coming into 26 years here in another month.
And so have you been with the same company or lender that whole time, or you moved around, or how does that worked out?
Yeah, no, the reverse mortgage industry. I started out with the little small company. When I got hired, they said, we've been acquired by a larger company. So that only lasted for a few weeks. And then the larger company came on. They said, we've been acquired by an even larger company. And that was Lehman Brothers out of New York. And so in August 2001, I started in 2000. In August 2001, I'm on top of the World Trade Center observation deck looking out with Tina Montgomery saying, wow, this is something, this is beautiful. In September, not too many days later, those things are on the ground. And so I started with Lehman Brothers, and then they were no longer after a while. And, so anyway, no, I've been with a few folks because people would rise up in the reverse mortgage industry, Bank of America and Wells Fargo, and they rise up and they would get out. It's a very niche, specialized product, has a lot of oversight and regulation and compliance, way too much for the bigger entities that had other interests to do that. So I've certainly been around with some of the bigs over the years. I'm with the big now. And so, yep, I've been with a few folks.
So now I know. So you were at the. Can we say who it is? I don't know. Is that allowed? Can we say who you currently work with? Is that
I'd rather not. We'll just say the largest reverse mortgage lender in the world.
okay? All right. The largest reverse mortgage lender in the world. Google it. See what Google AI says about that. But beyond that, I mean, that does not really interest me. What really interests me is your whole. Like I see you have these brochures behind you right now. Like you have this Housing Wealth Institute. Um, Tell me about that. Do I have the name right? The name's not right. Tell me about it.
Yeah, and the three books I've written, the fourth one will be out here soon enough. You know, I told you how it started. I called these housing counseling agencies. What's the aha? What's the gotcha? What's the fine print? So education was a big thing to me. And so when I started, I really focused on financial professionals. And they were screaming, oh, reverse mortgage is garbage, terrible. My clients would never need it. And so I began really writing and recording and doing things that were based on education. So I started the Housing Wealth Institute independent from any lender because there'd be no lender products. We weren't pushing. I was going to educate. And I really started it just as a resource that if I wrote something or if I collected some articles and I was talking to advisors, I could say, you can go over here and get some third-party credibility, some third-party education, apart from being involved with the lender and the things that come along with that. So the Institute started with me just educating financial advisors. It wasn't to consumers, it was to the financial advisor. And that grew and gained traction. And that's where most people have no idea that who I work for because I don't talk about it. And certainly not on these platforms. When we get a client, of course, we say this is who we represent and work for. But on the education, the front end side, and then the American College of Financial Services had me come and teach and speak, and they put me on camera. And next thing I know, I was at the Walter Cronkite Center in Arizona, the PBS. I did a thing, and I was on PBS. And I was all over, and not planned or intentioned at all, but people became interested in an education focus on the reverse mortgage. There are 52 things that it does, how it can strengthen a retirement that's going to last long, be expensive, and less predictable. How do we use all of our available assets for that? And who wouldn't? If you had a piggy bank, and over the years that piggy bank now had $3 million in it, wouldn't you? One, when you want to know what the piggy bank had inside of it, and two, how to access it, how to get it. And most folk have no idea that their modest home could have equity growing and building in their favor that's, $1, $2, $3 million over a 20 or 30 year period. And I begin to say, I think it makes sense for you to at least know, whether you use it or not, got this big piggy bank over there in the corner, you're living in it. Does it make sense for you to know how much is in there potentially and how it could be used for your retirement. I said, if I do it in a way that's educational, matter of fact, you can watch the whole educational thing. If it's not for you, don't talk to me. But get the education, at least know what you're sitting on and see if it makes sense. So that's kind of been my DNA, my mantra, Seb. Even when you heard me speak, I didn't mention a lender. I didn't sell anything. This is what it is. This is what it does. You want a book, you can have a book. And if you've got a client where this makes sense, allow my team to serve them. 200 people, 49 states. I'm happy to serve you, but I'm not here to sell you. Find out if it makes sense. Find out the 52 ways that can strengthen retirement. And then we'll chat if it's appropriate.
Yeah, and so you have a website where people can go to like educate themselves. What is that website?
Sure, there's my master class that people say, Don, it's www.housingwealthmasterclass.com. I said, just go there, housingwealthmasterclass.com. 47 minutes. Just watch the first 7 minutes. At 7 minutes, there's an exit ramp. If this is garbage, get off. If not, keep going. There's another exit ramp. And our housingwealthinstitute.com, that's where you can find a lot of articles or different resources that we have there. So any of those two will kind of begin your education journey. I like the master class because I like talking. People have said good things about it.
I'll bet.
And so again, it's really very hands off. If it makes sense for you, then our team will serve you. Happy to serve you. If it doesn't make sense, don't call us. We won't call you. Get the education. Let's see if it makes sense. And listen, I've had 16,000 consumer facing conversations. 3,000 people went forward and said this makes sense for me. So I've told more people, 13,000 folks said, yeah, I'm not sure this is going to be the best idea for you. I'm big on education, Seb. Let's make sure. Don't come back after the fact and say, oh, this is the worst mistake I ever made. I don't have people do that. Let's make sure this meets a strategic goal and we'll be 100% transparent with this. Let's make sure it makes sense for you.
Well, I just love that, man. Like, call us because we won't call you. To me, that's hilarious because so many people are worried that, oh my God, if I pick up the phone and I call somebody, I'm just going to get hounded to death, until finally do that. And it sounds like you won't do that. Like, yeah, I'm here if you need me, but if you don't need me, you're not going to hear from me. And that is really attractive. And now you say, Don, you say that, hey, I don't do sales, but you know what? You do a hell of a great job with marketing. Like, where did you get these marketing chops that you have? Did you get a coach? Do you hire somebody? Like, how did all this happen? I mean, it's amazing.
Sometimes I hear that, and no, I never had a coach. No, I watch folks like Seb, and we say, "What's Seb doing?" And I say, "You know what? Man, that's a good sounding microphone that Seb has."
But where'd you go? I can't see you anymore. You went
Just
black.
turned it off, and so my marketing is, I'm gonna go get a microphone like Seb has.
There you go. This thing is amazing, by the way. Like
And,
this is Joe Rogan's microphone. I'm not a big Joe Rogan guy at all, but when they said this is the microphone that he has, I'm going like, well, that's the microphone that I need. Yeah, this is the Shure 7 or whatever it is. But yeah, no, this thing
I've got the
is
same one
amazing.
and a USB version. So the there's an old principle. I taught a group within our industry this past Friday, and I said to them, "Hey Don, you've got 8,000 folks you email to," and I said, "Don't look at those big numbers. I've been at this a long time." And I said, "But let me give you some principles." And I gave him two principles. I said, one principle: there's a businessman. He's entrepreneurial franchise owner, and he wants to expand his business. So he finds one manager and he says, "Hey, I've got these 5 franchises. I want you to go out and expand and build on it." Another guy gives 2 franchises. Third guy gives 1, according to their ability, to their capacity. And he goes away. 2 years later, comes back. The guy that had 5 franchises says, "Hey, I've expanded it to 10. He said, "Man, that's awesome. Blah, blah, blah. And we're going to make you leader of this." The one that had 2 expanded to 4, and the one that had 1 didn't do anything. Just barely kept it afloat. Didn't take any chances. Didn't maximize opportunity. And the owner came back and told that guy, "You're wicked and lazy." I'm taking your one franchise. I'm giving it to the guy that has 10. And I said, and that's an ancient story, well known to some folks. That I said, what are you doing with the opportunity you're given? Everyone doesn't have the same capacity. You may not have 5 franchise capacity or 2, maybe just have 1. Be faithful with that. Be faithful with what you have. Now, I said the second story, again, an ancient story, talks about, let's use marketing as an example. I said, we've all heard you reap what you sow. And that's usually in a bad sense. You've done something wrong, and your grandmother says, now, the good book says you reap what you sow. And that's always bad. I said, but it's neither bad nor good. It just is. If I just sow a little bit of corn, a little bit of tobacco, that's all I'm going to get. But if I sow a lot of corn, a lot of tobacco, I'm going to get more and bigger. The corn will produce 3 stalks, every now and again 4. And that stalk, that ear corn is going to have all those. I said, you get back a lot more. And I said, but when you sow, so you got to reap. You got to sow to reap. You got to take advantage of your opportunities, and you got to understand that some seed, make sure the soil is good. Make sure the seed is good. You can't control the soil. Control the seed. What program, product, your integrity, honesty. Make sure the seed is good. Sometimes the soil, the birds will eat it, the weeds will get it, the sun will beat it down, but every now and again, some of that soil is going to be great, and it's going to produce a harvest 30, 60, or 100-fold. So I said, those are the 2 life lessons. So marketing for me is, who's out there sowing a lot of seed? Let me kind of learn from that one. Let me make sure the seed is good. How do I stay in front of folks? I can't just not tend to the crop. I got to get out there and pull some weeds and just get the birds scared off and make sure the rabbits don't eat it all up. I got to do my stuff. And so my marketing, I don't follow anyone in particular. I love when I was like, man, that backdrop he has, that purple lighting, man, that is attractive. And so I look at stuff like that, the sound of his microphone, what he's wearing, and I think, man, how do I emulate that? And so probably a lot of mine is emulation of folks, and I don't try to reinvent the wheel. There's a guy I met, and I told this story. So the guy said, we were talking, this book is called The Confident Mind. I've never heard of the book. But here's a guy at the conference, and I knew this guy was a excellent producer and helped a lot of people, generate a lot of business. And we were talking, and we were talking about football and something. He said, have you ever read the book The Confident Mind? Now, we're just walking back from a boat ride. I said, nope. And he says, every day, try to think of 3 wins you have at the end of the day. Maybe I didn't eat the dessert because I'm on a diet. Maybe 3 wins. I turned a negative into a positive. 3 small wins and go to bed on that. And I said, what book is that? Now, we're walking. He says, The Confident Mind. I pulled out my phone, went to Amazon, ordered it, had it in my office when I got back here. And I told the story. I said, Don, why would you spend $15 on a book? I said, because I learned one idea, one sentence can change a destiny, can change your whole trajectory. Seth's I don't know if your background is real or it's pretty, but I'm going to find out where you got it. And I said, man, I need me one of those right there. That's attractive. So I don't know if I have any secrets. I'm blessed to be around guys like you that put together good presentation. And I asked them, what'd you do? How'd you do it? And if you recommend a book, I typically go get that book because I know this helps Seb. It's probably going to help me. So I don't have any secrets on that.
Well, I'm going to get that book. And every time I hear somebody mention a book, not every time, but most of the time, I get the book, and especially if it's an audio book, because I'm in my car a lot. So I read audiobooks like nobody's business. So thank you so much for that book recommendation. And what you said, it basically is, success leaves clues, right? There's plenty of people out there who are being successful in different ways, and just, I don't want to say copying them, but learning from them, really is a master class for many people, and like your marketing that you do, because I got on your list after the conference, right? And I'm just like going like, man, this guy has it going on. Like the kind of marketing that you do, like I need to up my game because what you're doing is really incredible. So if people want to get hold of you, Don, what's the best way? Do they call you? Do they email you? Do they visit your website? How can people reach out if they want to have a conversation with you?
Sure, I'll give you three ways. Email ask Don, D-O-N Graves, Graves, at gmail.com. Ask Don Graves at gmail.com. That will get to me, so use that. You can call the 800 number, 1-800-7. I don't even give it out that much anymore. I forget it. So I'm sorry. 1-800-762-6315. 1-800-762-6315. But if you heard something, and particularly around the reverse mortgage, say, I want to learn a little bit more. I encourage you to go to housingwealthmasterclass.com, housingwealthmasterclass.com, and just get some knowledge. And sometimes, Seb, we know this, some things are not going to come to us, but they're going to come through us. And that we can get information that we can bless other people. And so you say, well, that's not for me. Well, it could be for your mother, your grandmother, your aunt, your neighbor. You've heard some bad things about reverse mortgages and you'd like to get a closer look. I encourage you to go to housingwealthmasterclass.com. Like I said, we won't bother you. We won't call you, but you'll have the knowledge. And so most people get through that and they say, Don, I'd like to learn a little bit more. And that's fine. We're here to help you. 49 states, 200.
49 states, except North Carolina, right? Except North
New
Carolina.
York. Except New
New
York
York.
State.
Oh, okay.
And New York is just tough. I have a conduit for New York, but I don't do it personally.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, Don, listen, man, thank you so much for sharing with us all of this fantastic information. And I'm going to go to housingwealthmasterclass.com and I'm going to, uh, take the course. I'll watch. I won't get off after 7 minutes. I'm going to watch the whole thing. So, and do you ever come out to California? Like, do you do like speaking tours like routinely? Like, it seems like you would be like a motivational speaker or something. I mean, you must give
Not
like,
as much as I'd like to, but I do enjoy, Seb, when it happens, and you were there. That's the joy of my life. So I'm always happy to speak or do any conferences or meetings. Hey, fly me out, give me a few chicken wings, a good
I'm going to
bed.
find a way to get you out here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great, man.
That'd be terrific. And then we can hang out and I'll show you around the Bay Area. So, all
That'd
right,
be
Don, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, man. We'll catch you on the flip side, okay?
my pleasure.
All
Thank you.
right.
Subscribe now